Greetings fellow casters and welcome back to Caster's Corner. Moonrise is here. As of the release of this video, Moonrise is both available at your local LGS store and through the online store. But more importantly, will be legal for play in premier events starting February 1st. If you're looking to grab some new cards, be sure to hit up our affiliate link down below, which will allow you to support the channel just by picking up cards from the online Celestial shop with no additional cost to you. As with any card game's new set drop, there's currently a mad dash to figure out what the best deck for the metagame is going to be. And ideas are going to be slung around left and right as packs are cracked and theories are crafted. Today, I'll be pitching you 10 different decks to try out for your early Moonrise testing. We're going to be doing 3 lunar and then 1 of each of the other elements to try and give you a little bit of variety to what you can expect to see. These are going to range from some pretty bland expected options to some of the more spicier picks, just to give you that little spice of life. And there is a lot to work with. So let's just go ahead and start off with the mayonnaise of the pile, Lunar 5s. While I know many of you are sick of 5s at this point, the deck has proven to be a reliable option into a metagame where you don't know what to expect. Nobby and Doppelganger are the primary Alestrals for this new addition to the lineup, with Nobby effectively operating as a 6 attacker into any non-lunar or solar enchanted Alestral, which he has done for a bit at this point as he has been legal since Shattered Stars Lunar. The difference now is that if he is able to connect to combat successfully, he'll be able to ascend immediately into Doppelganger from the deck, who will stack an additional -1 attack to those Alestrals and be able to swing right away, being effectively an 8 attacker the turn he comes down between his own stats, the -1 from his effect, and the -2 from the Nobby still being in play. As such, I expect this will be considered as a 3-1 or a 3-2 line inclusion for 5s, but also a very contentious option right now, as if Lunar is a popular strategy, Nobby is going to be performing a lot worse than you want it to, which in case you haven't heard, Moonrise has some really good Lunar cards in it. Speaking of those good cards, Full Moon Aggro is the next deck I want to talk about. It's been no secret amongst the various Alestrals content creators that Full Moon is the card that currently has the strongest bid for best card in set, and there's loads of reason for that. But starting with the biggest one, it makes Lunar one of the strongest aggro strategies we've ever seen. Werepup and Lycovoid specifically turned this card into one of the best damage secures in the game, obviously, but beyond the 4-spirit Lycovoid pushes, this card does so much more. Thanks to Temple of the Moon, Full Moon can serve as the best battle trick in the game, being a 2 attack boost and 2 damage boost for any Alestral being attacked into. It can also turn any Alestral into Pharaohgeist instantly by enchanting 2 lunar and then ascending over it with the necessary solar, meaning that accessing arguably the best aggro 3-drop in the game is even easier. Aside from those, it's also a surprise damage pusher thanks to the battle step, as by that stage it's impossible to stop an attack, meaning you can surprise push 2 additional damage in that combat for every set Full Moon you have, which can add up fast. There are honestly way more applications to this one card that I haven't even touched on here, but I'll leave it at this. Full Moon Aggro is on track to be the best deck to beat in the early metagame. Whether it stays that way long term is definitely suspect, but in terms of short term power, this is the deck to watch out for. As for other options in the Lunar camp, one that I think holds potential is a Dense Fog control list using Toxiri and Night Venom. Toxiri is able to search for fog on cast and gives a solid debuffs towards any suppressed Alestral, but the much more powerful push is its Ascension. Night Venom, by discarding Dense Fog, is able to pop 2 cards on the field, and while 2 or more Dense Fogs are in the underworld, is target immune to invoke runes. This makes it to where Night Venom is impervious to removal like Earthquake and resting on your laurels, meaning you can use its effect to clean up counter runes and push in for massive swing turns. Other Lunar control options include Bandaloon for rune control, as he doesn't target what he wants to take before it resolves, Gloombat is a mass back row punish that can also get you a quick Night Venom, Necrolith if you're already looking at mass suppression, and Corvuscle and the previous Pandalins to recycle Dense Fog. And honestly, that's a large enough wave to where the strategy is definitely worth a consideration. Leaving Lunar untouched to look at the other elements of the table, we've got one deck for each of the remaining spirit types for you to look at, starting with Bug Box for Earth. I've made it no secret how much I adore Ardbud as a card. Able to search some of the best Alestrals in the format right now with Viserys and Specterus, it's easily one of the more interesting early releases from Shattered Stars, but looking beyond its basic utility, it gets far more interesting. If we were looking at Earth Nexus as a strategy, because remember, Demeter does come back to 3 on February 1st, we can look at Ardbud's interactions with blue. Let's say we have an Ardbud on the field that was not prioritized as removal. On the previous turn, we searched for Rhynymph, so this turn we cast it and expend to move it to the back row. We can then bloom to Nexus from the Ardbud to the Rye Nymph for that Earth Spirit and re-enchant the Earth from Bloom's effect to Ardbud, netting us another search. We can then disenchant the Nexus Spirit to special ascend into Ardvarum, who on cast can search Rhinosect, and since we already have Rye Nymph live, we can just drop him right away. There's also Titan, who can convert those insectoids from hand into removal twice a turn, and can dodge all kinds of Celestial related disruption, though special ascending is a bit of a larger ask with Ardvarum's effect. The much more feasible option for the Ascension line is actually Paleoth, as he's able to dump a copy of Cedarsaur from deck and add one to hand. Or actually he doesn't, because as it turns out, Paleoth has the option to successfully search for its first search, but then fail to find on the second. And if you do so, the first search will automatically be sent from deck to grave, meaning that rather than having to search a Cedarsaur with its second effect, you can choose to just dump a Cedarsaur, meaning you instantly get summoned back a 2 Earth Enchanted Celestial. If you're in a particularly good setup, you could even cast it with 2 Frost, bloom to get 2 more Earth onto it, and search for Titan directly with its effect, and then ascend that way. But truthfully, that's a big ask overall. If you're looking at Earth this set, the Titan path is absolutely a line that you would want to be looking at through this set directly, as it's going to give you the most power and value long term in your games. But back on Cedarsaur for a minute, this is actually shaping up to be one of the best cards in the set because of its trigger. Because of the Paleoth setup, you could kind of run Paleoth as a super foamy of sorts, which means that Frost and Earth have an ascension point that is just absolutely incredible. We'll talk more about this in the Frost section, but for now, this is going to make the previously theorized Centaurboar decks a lot more viable in Earth Nexus strategies, which is extremely exciting. Moving into Fire, I've been pretty vocal that I feel Fire's new options are the most limiting of the various elemental offerings in Moonrise, and I do stand by that, but Fire Nexus is still shaping up to be a solid deck. There is one card here that I definitely discounted as a solid pickup for Fire Nexus as a strategy, and that would be Salishade. Salishade is one of those Celestrals that can get out of hand very quickly, and with Fire Nexus's best offensive 2-drop being limited, Salishade might be able to pick up that slack. With the opponent sitting with 3 Celestrals in Underworld, Salishade will already be a 6 attacker, which makes it able to swing over any common offensive threat in the game, and makes the opponent risk a lot to swing over it by making it bigger, playing more Celestrals into it. The obvious major flaw here is Eddy, but thankfully most of the time that you're playing Fire Nexus, Volcanic Forge is going to be active to handle that last critical defense point. Honestly, this is definitely the longest shot in my opinion, but I do think that Salishade has a place in Moonrise's version of Fire Nexus, though we'll have to wait and see. Moving into Water, as we saw with the last webcam event, Water Reanimator is already a solid option for the current meta. So what if I told you it just gets better with Moonrise? Oistillery helps solve a lot of the existing issues with the deck, namely in that it is more reliable removal than Lockagon for that initial pop, helps unbrick your hand by discarding 2 costs you may not need in the moment, and most importantly, clears the way for your massive pushes by doing so. This gives Water a way to actively put their Celestrals into the discard to reanimate, which in turn can result in your play being much more expensive by either setting up healers for a Rise from the Depths, or a much more powerful burst of hitting a 2-drop with Rise from the Ashes. It also puts Hurricane into a very favorable position for the deck, being able to clear out responses before locking in your big push. This deck is an explosive menace if you're not ready for it, and if outing 1 2-drop was hard enough before, you're not ready to out 2. Moving into Thunder, with Zeus coming back to 3 on February 1st, a lot of interest has been leveled towards Thunder Nexus with the Moonrise meta, and while it's pretty dire for Thunder right now, it still has a lot going for it, and having a reliable Nexus bank again means that Thunder Nexus is back on the table. Magnaros is not Spark It, but arguably does a lot more that's in line with what Thunder wants in the first place, digging resources out of your deck. Let's think of a hypothetical here. You have a rabbit that survived the turn in defense. I know, big ask. You then follow it up with Magnaros and a Nexus bank, using the effect of Nexus to the rabbit. Because both Magnaros's effect and Rabbit's effect start on a new chain after the fact, you can layer it so that Rabbit resolves first, getting you the look and shuffle, and then Magnaros after, getting to foretell 2 to 3 and grab a Thunder Invoke rune. Notably right now, this can grab Thunderstorm, Race to the Top, and in my opinion the most important for Thunder as a strategy, Hurricane. This might not be a consistent option for Thunder decks, but it is a solid direction to take it in. Another option would be Electronite, which is quite powerful in regards to the amount of advantage it can generate with Electrifly, but getting to it reliably is going to be the hard part with the beating Thunder has taken recently in the restricted lists. And you're asking Thunder to not just stick a rabbit, but also stick another Celestial for a turn to ascend over, and personally I think that is a bit of an ask right now. Okay, I know I've already talked about 5s for a bit, but hear me out on this one please. If you opt for playing winds as your element of choice for 5s, that already gives you access to Galaxair, Aeromare, and Sorlet, which are solid inclusions, but now also gives you the option to run the new Infornax, which can bounce cards and generally disrupt the board quite heavily. He also turns every rune you play into a battle trick, as paying for anything with wind is going to boost his attack by 2 for the turn, making him even more of a threat. By opting into wind, you'll also get free access to Hurricane as well without having to tech out your spirit deck, thanks to 5s already having wind, water, and thunder in your arsenal with this build. So a lot of positives now to take that direction. As for Frost, a lot of players in my testing circles have been hyping this one up, so I'd be remiss not to give the Frost slot here to Frost Turbo. Snowlet, Asprowl, and Blistrix are an extremely difficult line to pull off the combo for, but if you can manage it, this could be one of the fastest and most powerful strategies in the game right now. Between Avalanche, Morolith, and Aurora Borealis to enchant onto Snowlet additional times, there are a good number of ways to mill yourself quickly, as well as options to set up the correct mills to go off, such as with Corvuscull. The much more likely path for the deck to hit though is actually with Cedar Soar, as hitting it with your mills will give you both an Ascend Over point and a potential search point for Blizz 2 if you take the time to properly enchant it, which while slower is still an option. This is going to take a dedicated pilot and a lot of theory crafting to crack the direction for the strategy to take, but if you can crack it, this has the potential to be the deck that goes the distance. Lastly, for Solar, in my opinion, this is the element that got the most out of Moonrise that wasn't specifically Lunar, getting 2 new useful Ascension lines in Windgen for Tornadgen and Cockaray for Dracoray. Sadly, Solar as it stands only really has room for one of these options, and as it stands, Dracoray is the one that lines up best with what Solar really wants right now. Nebuleo can be used to help dig out your first lights, Calfmel turns your Recover 3 into a Recover 6, and if you don't need the additional spirits back, you can always misenchant the Dracoray with water for Tsunami protection. Speaking of Tsunami, Armadon has proven to be quite the annoyance, as you can get it in for 1 without declaring the attack, and using a defensive Tsunami play will go even further as the opponent will burn for 1 when you get it off, being an excellent defensive option for Solar to get off safe hard Ascensions with. Let's be fair, there are tons of decks to try out outside of just the 10 that I mentioned. So by all means, please tell me what you're going to be testing with these early days of Moonrise down in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you're cooking up. Until next time, I wish you all happy casting and happy testing. Happy set release!